Well, guys, they finally did it. I can tell you, after watching this week's episode of Ahsoka, Star Wars is finally back. Thank you to Dave Filoni for this 10 out of 10 amazing episode. Let me tell you all of the reasons this episode rocked. Which is what I would say if I sucked on Dave Filoni's toes just like every other YouTuber. But I don't. So I can tell you how I actually feel about this week's episode. My feelings can be summarized into one depressing euphemism. Another week, another disappointment. Last week, although not great, the episodes were better than I had expected them to be. This time around, however, we were not so lucky. This week, the episode was just as moronic as I expected it to be, if not worse, and actually carried a brain cell tax in exchange for my viewership.
What about the Orb of Confusion?
So before going into the actual breakdown for episode 3, I must first give credit where credit is due. I have to actually commend Dave Filoni on managing to fill up an entire 30-minute time slot while accomplishing nothing in the story. And I mean it. I'm serious. You could essentially skip this episode and you wouldn't be lost next episode. So good job, Dave Filoni, and let me explain. The episode starts off with Hera mouthing off to a group of senators about how she wants to dedicate an entire task force to finding Grand Admiral Thrawn, who at this point is officially a ghost. The Republic has no reason to believe he is alive, as he was officially declared dead years prior. So they of course deny Hera the task force, and she gets all mad. But while that's taking place, Ahsoka and Sabine, while in hyperspace, heading towards the coordinates of the tracking device Hera placed on the freighter in the last episode, practice lightsaber training with sticks. Ahsoka fills in the audience that everyone is force sensitive. It's just that training, talent, potential can make a difference. So while we know that the Force technically is in everything, not everyone can be a Jedi, as midichlorian counts do make a difference in one's ability to harness the Force. Sabine and Ahsoka continue to cosplay dollar store versions of Luke and Obi-Wan from A New Hope, until they are informed by Hera that the Senate rejected a request for an entire task force based on a colloquial rumor. Man, go figure! A new and vulnerable government not committing an enormous amount of resources based on a rumor? How could they not just believe women? Preposterous. Well, after telling Ahsoka and Sabine this, they quickly lose contact with Hera and decide to drop out of hyperspace near their destination. And they stare at a giant halo ring that's floating above the planet. Shin and Merrick then come out of nowhere in starfighters with some disposable bad guys by their side and start unloading on Ahsoka's shuttle. Now, it's important to point out that this shuttle takes more hits than the Death Star without exploding. And I'm not exaggerating. The Millennium Falcon couldn't take as many direct hits as this shuttle did. Anyways, as you would expect, the snub fighters are mostly destroyed. Well, all of the disposable ones anyways. And Morgan Elsbeth's space station, the Halo Ring, opens fire on the shuttle with turbo lasers that are designed for capital ship combat. So they eventually disable the ship, and Ahsoka and Sabine are left floating in space in a disabled shuttle. I would also add, without shields. So Ahsoka gets out of the ship, yes, out of the ship, in space, and onto the wing. She's wearing a spacesuit, but still, she's out in space. This is all in an attempt to protect the entire ship from the remaining snub fighters, and conveniently, instead of shooting at the opposite side of the ship that Ahsoka was on, the remaining snub fighters, piloted by main characters, conveniently shoot right into Ahsoka's lightsabers so she can conveniently deflect any incoming blasts. Sabine somehow fixes critical damage that was dealt to the ship by the turbo lasers within a minute or two from the inside. This brings all the engines back online with full power, which allows them to escape the remaining starfighters. They fly in the atmosphere of the planet they're above and lose the snub fighters between a herd of local space whales that are flying in the atmosphere. They then find a nice place to touch down in the middle of the regional forest. The episode then cuts to Balon, who's been standing on the ground this whole time, and he decides it's time to send his men into the forest after Ahsoka and Sabine. Just when I thought the episode was about to move the plot forward, the episode ends. So, to summarize what we accomplished this episode, the Republic refuses to send a task force with Ahsoka. Sabine is continuing her seemingly futile Jedi training. Ahsoka and Sabine arrive at their destination. That's it. We don't learn of anything else or see anyone else or do anything else. Anything that happens in this episode could have been summarized in a single throwaway line or a 5-minute scene. Our characters got to the place where they were going and the episode ends. So, if I were you, skip this one. Unless you're Dave Filoni, of course, which is this episode's target audience. Dave wrote this one for himself, and it shows. So, thank you, Dave, for absolutely nothing.